Welcome back everyone to Jface Games. Today we're talking about The Black Hack. It is an OSR style game, and today is the video where we do a exploration, right? The teach about the game, and I'm going to kind of break it down into the things that I've gotten used to talking about, which is resolution, character design, combat, and then resource management and magic, right? And so let's go ahead and start with resolution system. This is a D20 roll under system. But I would say that it's a little tougher than most in the sense that when you do your D20 roll under, if you get the exact number, that's a fail. You have to get under the number you're trying to test. Everything is an attribute test, meaning that this has the standard sort of Dungeons & Dragons 6 attributes of strength, dex, wisdom, intelligence, and charisma and constitution. And everything is that. Whenever you're doing anything, you are just rolling to try and get under one of your 6 stats. And that's it, right? Super simple in that the complexity is low in that sense. So let's get into the actual character design, and then we'll come back and talk about like combat and how it differs a little bit. So let's get down here into the actual characters. Boop, 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 boop. Here are your 6 attributes. Once again, very clean in terms of what they're trying to say. What you're potentially doing with those. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to, first off, when it comes to like kin, ancestry, there's no ancestry in this game. You're not getting any bonuses for being anything else. Pretty much they just kind of assume that you're going to be human. If you want to be something else, great, that's just flavor, right? Your attributes we already talked about, they're the standard 6. You're going to be rolling 3d6, and you're going to go down the line. This is hardcore old school. You are going to roll 3d6, go down the line, wherever you get your d6, wherever it is, that's where it stays. If you ever roll, this was the interesting, if you ever roll 14 or higher on a stat, your next stat immediately becomes a 7. So if I'm going to the line, I get, 12, 10, 14, oh good, oh, wisdom becomes a 7. So that's always fun. And then at the end, you can swap 2 to kind of make it so whatever class you want it to be, right? When it comes to class, you are going to have the standard 4, Warrior, Thief, Cleric, Wizard. They're pretty streamlined. It's a 1-page dealy-do, with the Cleric and Wizard having a second page of just spells. But for the most part, it's just 1 page that gives you some cool powers. And there are some cool powers. They still have a lot of flavor. And we'll look at one of those in just a second. And the final thing is you have a background. So when it comes to your skills, this is represented by backgrounds. In essence, if you can describe how your background is beneficial to you, then whatever attribute test you're making, you're just rolling it with advantage, right? So you're going to be able to roll 2d20, take the lower, and you're trying to get lower than your charisma. So if my background is I was a merchant, and I think that I can convince this person that he should not kill me because I used to haggle all the time, and the DM says, yeah, I can give you that, and I rolled 2d20 instead of 1 and try and get underneath my charisma to influence this person, right? So maybe that's an example of that. So let's go ahead and get into classes. So here's a warrior right here, right? 1 page, right? Lots of flavor. And so what you have here is it's going to tell you what your starting hit points are, your starting hit dice, and then you're going to get really into what can I do, right? And for the most part, what you do is just your attributes, but every character is going to have a little bit of flavor, right? So down here, you're self-reliant. You're better at fixing your armor. We'll talk about armor in a second. You can use your shield to attack with, cool. But then Dealer of Death, this is the coolest ability. This is the coolest ability in this game. This one alone got me excited, which is the idea that you have a certain amount of damage dice that are d6s, and that number is going to go up, I believe, as you level. So you start off with equal to your hit dice, right? So at first level, you've got 1. At second level, you have 2. Third level, let's just say third level. Third level, you got 3 of these things. Pretty much. When you make an attack, you take these 3 dice and you have them sitting next to you. You take these 3 dice and you put them next to the monsters you want to attack, and you say, I'm going to hit these guys. And then after you've assigned those dice to different monsters, you get to narrate how you're going to attack all 3 of those. Then you make attribute tests, strength tests, I'm assuming, or maybe you're doing ranged attacks with a bow, but strength tests how you're gonna roll for each of those, and then you're gonna roll that damage dice if you hit that target and do damage. This is awesome. It's really cool. And now the cool thing is you can put all 3 of these on 1 monster, the way this describes. So you just, third level, you get 3 attacks. What? It's awesome. Really cool. And so this is the kind of flavor you're going to get from each class. Each class has its own little bit of flavor. The spell list, so I'll go ahead and pop down there real quick, is this. So here's prayers, and you can see there's 4 levels per spell, and there's 10 levels in the game. So very clean, one-line spells, very nice, very easy. Abilities and features, there are a lot of powers in the game, but there's not a lot of powers in the game, but they're very flavorful. My personal favorite was the Dealer of Death one, but that's the kind of thing you're going to expect in this, right? The prayers and the wizard spells, they give a lot more flexibility in terms of different things you can do, but this is a lot more of a game where you're going to be role-playing and trying to think about and puzzle your way through things. Can I do this? Can I do that? You're not going to have a spell that automatically lets you succeed at certain things. When it comes to gear, you have encumbrance, right? And encumbrance is something where if you have a strength score, you can only carry as many things as your strength score. But what I think is really cool is this game has something called the usage die. Now, the usage die is any piece of equipment you have might have a usage die, and that's how many uses you're going to get out of it, right? So if you have a D6 or a D8 or a D10 usage die, what's happening is you roll that die at the end of whenever you use that item or the end of an encounter or whatever the case is. And if you get a 1 on that die now steps down, right? So if I have a D8 and I roll a 1, it's now going to become a D6. And this is trying to give you an idea of how many uses potentially you're going to get out of this thing, right? So what's really cool about this is that you can use this for everything. You can use this, what I love, the one I loved the most when they kind of described this was arrows. Like, how many times do you just scrap the idea of counting arrows for a PC? Because it's just too much of an issue. And this, you could say, look, you've got a D6 usage arrow quiver, right? And that at the end of an encounter, you then roll that D6. Do you have any arrows left? Cool, you've got arrows still. Very cool. I'm already, the third video for Black Hack is going to be the steal. And I can tell you right now, I'm already stealing usage die, but I'm using it for something else. So very, very cool. The other type of equipment that's probably important is armor, but we're going to get to that when we get into combat. The final thing is advancement. When you advance in levels, there's this interesting concept of experience or storytelling. So here we go right now, is the idea that you are going to tell stories, right? So you first have this narrative with your DM and say, what are the things that kind of happened in this session? Did I feel like I did any of these things, right? Did I feel like I completed a quest? Did I feel like I overcame some sort of, scenario? Did I discover something? Did I defeat some named person? I love this one, failing so spectacularly in such a dramatic fashion. You kind of tally these up, right? And if you have, I think it's enough of these equal to your level, right? Something along those lines, like you have enough experiences that equal your current level, then you can actually level. And you then go back to your class page to see what you get. But then what you have to do is you have to tell stories to the other players. You have to tell the other players one very short story from the character's past over a round of drinks and toast for each experience they wish to share, right? So if I've got 3 experience points, I've got to tell 3 short stories about my character. You probably go around the table telling these stories, and then you roll in this carousing die to see what else kind of happens. And depending on like your level, you have a more success chance to getting up higher than lower, but really cool stuff. Like this is just a very, let's make the idea of leveling fun, and let's make it interactive, and let's make it a shared experience versus, okay, you guys are all ding level 3, I'll see you next week, and everyone goes home and they look through their books and they level up and they come back and their character's now at level. This makes leveling different, right? It makes it more of an experience. So very cool, very cool, very cool. All right, so now let's get into combat. Combat, first off, initiative. Initiative is bad guys in the middle, right? So it's an initiative system where bad guys go in the middle, and if you are going to be getting into combat, let's go up here. You are going to be taking a dex test. Remember, everything's an attribute test in this game, so whatever your dex is, you're going to roll lower than that, not equal to, lower than that. If you get lower than that, you're going to go before the bad guys. If you get higher than that, you're going to go after the bad guys. So monsters will be in the middle, depending on fails by the players, right? This is also considered a moment. They call turns moments in this game. Or they rounds or moments. And player turns within a moment, and a moment is a round. Every round, every new moment, you're going to re-roll this, right? So you're making these dex tests every round to see if you're before the monsters or after the monsters. So there's a little bit of variability in that sense. I really like this. I think it's a nice little twist where it could be group initiative, but it's actually monsters in the middle technically. I really like this. They call turns and rounds moments and minutes, and this is supposed to be a little bit more of a, makes it universal language so that you can use this for not just combat. So it's for two different things, right? Where you have moments and minutes, where in combat, moments or rounds and minutes are like the encounter, I assume. And then in exploration, moments are the 10-minute blocks, and minutes are like the 30-minute blocks. So you can extrapolate it in and out depending on if you're doing like exploration versus combat, those kind of things. There's an action economy. It's super simple. It's you have one attack and you have one move, and the distance in terms of moves are things are close, nearby, far away, or very distant. And when you make your move, you get closer. You move up one of those rungs, right? So if those are my distances, then if a monster is nearby, then if I move, I go from close here to nearby that monster. So now that monster is close to me, right? I move that monster up this range, or whatever the case is. If a monster is far away from me and I move, then that means it's going to be nearby me now, right? Super simple. You can replace your action with a move. So if a monster is far away, I can go move, and now it's close to me. Oh no, but I don't have any other actions to do. Very simple. The attack mechanic in this game is, once again, everything's an attribute test. So if I'm going to attack something, guess what? I'm attacking melee. I'm going to be using a strength attribute check to try and attack it with my melee weapon. If I'm going to be ranged, I'm going to be using a dex attribute check to attack it with my ranged weapon. Damage done is determined by your class, so that's kind of cool, right? So if I am a fighter, I think I'm doing like a D8 damage, and if I have, the only difference would be if I'm using a large weapon, you just add a D4 extra. So I could be a cleric with a large weapon, and so, or a cleric, I think it was. And so I don't remember the cleric. Let's look. So if I were a cleric with a large weapon, a cleric's damage die is a D6 or a D4 if I'm unarmed, so D6. But if it was a large weapon, D6 plus D4. Cool. So I get to roll those two. If I get a crit, I get to do double damage, right? So if I get a critical hit, I do double damage. Perfect. But now we get into defense, right? Players will be rolling, not GM. So this is like the pressure system, and like a lot of different games that are nowadays coming out, is they're trying to not let the DM sit there and roll all the attacks. So the GM's not going to roll any dice in this game. And if the player is being attacked by melee, they are going to so what's cool is if they're being attacked by melee, they're going to be making a strength test. If they're being attacked by range, they're going to be making a dexterity check to try to avoid being hit. So it seems like if you have a high strength, this is why you're only rolling 3d6 for your attributes, because it's probably very hard to get like a 17 or 18. But if you had an 18 strength, you're going to be a powerhouse when it comes to being able to block and do damage. So that's pretty cool. But what's awesome is they have this armor system. And so let me grab the armor system real quick. Here we go. The armor system is this idea that you will have some sort of armor, right? And it is going to be something like an AV, it's going to have an armor value. So AV2, AV1, AV. So right down here, you can see cloth is AV1, plate mail is AV4. And what does this mean? This means that anytime you have to defend yourself, right? So I've got to make that check and roll that, strength attribute skill check to try and not get hit. If I do get hit, I can spend one of these AV points for my armor. I can spend one of these points and not take any damage, right? So I can immediately say, you know what? I've got this cloth armor that is AV1. I'm going to get rid of that, and now I'm not going to take the damage, but I now don't have that armor anymore. What happens then, anytime I get to take a rest, after a rest, player with broken armor, because it's broken, right? This armor is technically broken. You have dice that represent your armor. So every one of these AV points is going to be a D6, and it's sitting there on my equipment. And what I would do is I would say, okay, I'm going to put this off to the side, showing that I don't have it. If I want that back on my character sheet, when I rest, I can roll, I believe, one of the dice. You might be able to roll all of them. And if you get if you roll above the armor value, AV, the die is no longer broken. So that's really cool, because what this signifies is, say that I have cloth armor, right? I've only got one AV, but I'm going to be able to fix that very quickly after every rest we take, right? Because I only have to roll above that, right? if they roll above that. So I can't roll a 1, but if I roll a 2, so if, you know, I've got a huge chance that I'm going to be able to patch up my armor, but it only helps me 1 attack during combat. If I've got plate mail, right? Plate mail, I could potentially burn 4 of these and not take damage during a fight. But to fix these, I have to roll a 5 or a 6 when I'm resting. And it's going to probably take me a long time to fix all of it back up because it's plate mail. I'm going to have to sit there and hammer it out. You know, I'm not just threading it up. So this is thematic and tactical. Really cool concept. And there's ways that you can boost this. Like you can have like a servant who comes around with you who's an armorer, and they make this so that they drop these numbers by like 1. You get a shield or a helmet, you get +1 each. So if you have a shield and a helmet and plate mail, you've got 6 AV. Really cool stuff. So there's some cool concepts here. If you roll on or below their armor, that die is broken permanently until it's repaired. So when you fail this check, you don't get to, that die is gone during this dungeon run, right? So it can be a little scary. Your armor is all banged up and gone, but it helped you out. So really cool concept here. I don't know what that means for cloth if you're now naked. If you roll a 1, that's unfortunate for you. So very cool idea in terms of armor and defense, right? We already talked about modifications to rolls in this game. The main modification being advantage, disadvantage. Really interesting, you know. But there is an interesting concept in this one where it comes to advantage, disadvantage, where they state specifically that with advantage, the player chooses the result they want. And with disadvantage, the GM chooses. So it's not that you have to take the lower. It's who is choosing which dice to take. And I think this is important because this now gives the GM a little bit more agency over the drama of the game, right? Because maybe they do want that player to succeed during that scenario because they know things are about to get worse. So they say, you know what? Go ahead and succeed on that one. Because they want the narrative to keep going. They don't want it to just be dead. So this could be a problem for certain DMs that can't say no to players or that are too much on the player's side, or it could be a problem for GMs that are too much on the against the player's side. But I like it. I like the idea there, right? And this advantage, disadvantage can go for any die. It can be skill checks. It can be random encounter dice. It can be usage die. It can be whatever, right? So we have conditions in this game. The conditions in this game are right here. They're going to be weakened, distracted, stuck, and paralyzed. What I like about this is that they have only 4, and they're very distinct in terms of what they do, right? Meaning that they just have to deal with the action economy in the game, right? They're straight to the action economy. Weakened, disadvantaged all skill checks. That means every attack you roll, everything you do is disadvantaged. Distracted, you can't perform actions, but you can move. Stuck, you can't move, but you can perform actions. Paralyzed, you can't do anything, right? Very clean, very simple. Hopefully you don't use paralyzed a lot as a GM because that would be really painful for your players. We already talked about distances and movement, so let's get into resource management. Resource management, the main thing we already talked about is moments and minutes. Moments being the things in combat, split seconds, that kind of stuff versus out. Minutes being more long exploration, adventuring, or rounds. There is a rest mechanic. We already talked about if you rest for an hour, you can roll your broken armor die. So it's got to be an hour. It can't be this 10-minute thing. And you also get to roll one of your hit dice to get back health. If you rest a full day, then you can get back all your hit dice and all your hit points. But it makes a distinction that a rest means that during that time, you never made a strength or a dex check of any sort. So that's interesting. That's cool. It's interesting to consider a full day being these 12 hours without any of those sort of strength or dex checks. We already talked about the usage die. That's the biggest action pool sort of economy for me that was in this game. And when it comes to health and dying, that's pretty much hit points and hit dies. That's your standard sort of 5e dungeon crawl kind of thing. There was this really cool concept that you can have ongoing damage in this game. And the ongoing damage, I believe this comes in when we get into the GM section. When we have damage from monsters, pretty much it just says, what's the hit dice? So this is one of those things where let's make it as smooth and easy as possible for a GM to create a monster. How many hit dice does the monster have? Guess what? This is how much damage it does, right? And then this is how much, then there's an ongoing damage is going to be, that in the parentheses is trying to say how much ongoing damage might there be if this ability has ongoing damage. It's just equal to whatever the hit dice is. That's I mean, it's so easy. I don't know what the math is. I don't know how well, it might be deadly as hell. I don't know how much it works out to be, but it's really clean in terms of that, right? And then also when it comes to hit dice, all monsters just use d8. So it's like very quickly I can say, okay, I've got a 3rd level monster. That means 3d8 hit dice, roll it up. It's going to be doing 2d4 damage, and it's going to be having a 4 ongoing damage, and it's up to the players to see if it hits or not anyway. So I don't need to know its attack value, it's anything else, right? Super easy, super quick. That's really nice. When it comes to the magic system is pretty much, so you can memorize a certain level spells up to your level, and the spell level type is also up to your level. So if I'm 3rd level, it means I can memorize 3 spells, and they can be anywhere from 1st level, 2nd level, 3rd level. You know, simple math. Casting a spell just kind of happens, but after you cast a spell, you make an attribute test, and you add the spell level to the roll. So if my attribute is intelligence, say my intelligence is 14, I'm rolling a d20 trying to get under 14, but I've got to add 3 to it if I'm casting a 3rd level spell. If I get over the spell, that spell is no longer in my memory, right? So there's no spell slots. There's no, I only have these 3 spells for the day. It's, if I'm casting a 3rd level spell a ton, there's a higher chance I'm going to lose the ability to cast it. Also, on top of that, speaking of that, if I cast a spell more than once, meaning that I've cast Fireball, now I'm going to cast Fireball again, subsequent rolls are also made with disadvantage. So not only is there a higher chance I'm going to lose it because it gives +3, but I also got disadvantage on the roll. It's much cleaner than spell slots. I shouldn't be able to spam Fireball all day, right? You can cast spells directly from books or scrolls, though, so that's nice, but there's also a higher chance of misfire. Arcane is your intelligence, prayers or wisdom. Simple, right? Now, that's the game. The game is simple and clean and easy. What I'm not going to get into, but I'm just going to kind of talk briefly about, is that here you can see that I am, I don't know if you can see it, but I'm on page 33 of 126, right? So the rules are compacted down into, in essence, right here, the rules are done in 30 pages, and the next 90 pages are charts and things for DMs to use, right? There are so many cool charts. There are so many cool spell fail charts, NPC rolling charts, random encounter charts. There's a hex map and city generation chart area. I'll kind of scroll down to that real quick. Hope no one gets dizzy or vomits. There's poison charts, antidote charts, treasure charts, story hooks. There's drop tables. This is a drop table. You want to find out what's on the corpse? Guess what? You drop X amount of D6s based on the hit dice. So I drop 3d6 if it's a 3 hit dice onto this piece of paper. If it's a 5 or 6, wherever it landed, that's what I get. I mean, just really neat little things. Here's your hex chart. You're going to create a hex map, and you're going to figure out what the flora and fauna is based on these different things. This lets you know how far away, nearby. There's a lot going on here, and it's really cool, really inspirational. So GM-wise, there's a ton of this game that I'd say you need to check out. But that's it. That's the Black Hack. This was The Teach. I'm going to try and get an encounter of this in sometime soon, and then I'll tell you what I'm going to steal from this game. Spoiler, the usage die is one of them. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the bell, and I can't wait to talk to you guys later.